Alright, so this is solving equations using factoring. We have our little quadratic up here, and the thing we've done all this factoring, and now you get to actually apply it. And here's what you have to think about: we have to turn this into zero. That's the question. It's saying what times what equals zero. Well, the only way to get zero is if you are multiplying by zero. You must multiply by zero to whatever you have here, and that will give you zero, which means this what has to equal 0. So if we solve that, just normal linear equation, you get 3. But the other situation too is that this could be 0. So if you take that one and you solve it, then you get 1/2. And those are your answers. It's 3 and 1/2. So this is our form. Anytime you have a factor times a factor and it equals 0, each of those factors has to equal 0. And that's the form we want to get in. So if we're given this form, we need to have those two situations. Number one, you have to set it equal to 0. Number two, you need to factor it. And then number 3, after you've factored it and you've set it equal to 0, you can now take each of those factors and set them equal to 0. So that's our key steps. We need to have it, number 1, set equal to 0. They need to be factored, and then we can solve for those factors. So that's our first step, number 1. We set it equal to 0. Number 2, we factor it. So what two numbers when multiplied give you 5? When added give you 6? It's 5, and it's 1. And then step 3, set each factor equal to 0. So we get x equals -5, x equals -1, and then those are your answers: -5, -1. That's it. 3 steps every single time. So when you see that exponent, we can't solve it linearly. So the whole point is to take this quadratic or cubic, whichever equation they give you, and to turn it into linear equations that we know how to solve. And it's always the same steps. So we move those over here. We set it equal to 0. And the reason I put everything on the 10h squared side is because if you look over here, we have 9h in 1, and we have h squared. And when we factor, we want to make sure that we keep our 10h squared positive. It's just easier to factor. Alright, so the factored form will be 10h plus 1 and h minus 1. And this is a trinomial, so if you need a hint on how to factor it, you need to go back and look. Remember, we have the AC method. That's the one we did. So 10 times -1. Alright, and then we can set each factor now equal to 0. And then those are your answers: -1/10 and 1. How do you know they're correct? You plug them back in. These are still solutions to your equation. So if you plug in 1, you get 9 times 1, it's 9, plus 1, it's 10. And over here we have 10 times 1 squared. That's also 10. Checks out. You do the same with the -1/10, it'll work. Same with these two, the -5 and the -1, plug them back into their equation, you get the right answer. Alright, here I'll give you one more, and then the rest we'll do in class. If you look at this one, it's already set equal to 0, so there's step 1. Oh, let's go back and actually write the steps over here. I'm going to put them in blue this time. So there was step 1, set it equal to 0. Step 2, factor. Step 3, solve. Step 1, set equal to 0. Then we know we're going to have step 2, which is factoring. And then step 3, solve. I can just write them because I know those are the steps. Common factor. How do I know common factor? Well, you always check for common factors first. And they have a common factor of 2. But if we only take out the 2, then this negative is going to be given to the a squared. And remember, if you put a negative in front of your leading term, it makes it a little difficult. So we want to factor it out as well. So what we're left with is x squared. We are left with a squared minus, because negative 2 times negative 4 will give you 8. So now it's set equal to 0. It's factored. And then step 3, set each factor equal to 0. Wait, it's not factored. It's an a squared. These need to be linear. So we have to keep going. So it's a minus 2, a plus 2 equals 0. Now it's factored. And we set each factor equal to 0. So a minus 2 equals 0, a plus 2 equals 0. And you're probably thinking, wait, why didn't you use a negative 2? Yes, negative 2 is a factor, but it doesn't have an a. We're solving for a. We're trying to find the things that will give us 0. Negative 2 will never be 0. The only things that will be are a minus 2 and a plus 2. Those are the only things that have variables. So those are the only letters that we can actually substitute something in for. Also, we're solving for a, not 2. So just ignore the 2. So now a is 2, and a is negative 2. And those are your answers. Negative 2, 2. Plug them back in, check them, and you'll see it works. Alright, so I want you to try this next one. Have it finished by the time we get into class. And again, step 1, set it equal to 0. Factor, set each factor equal to 0. I'll give you a hint on this one. It's a GCF. You have to get very good at checking these. It's something that just takes a lot of practice, but always look for it too, and x is your common factor. So try it, solve it. When you get to class, we'll finish it. If you feel like you want to do the rest of them, go for it. I'll give you harder questions in class.